Chapter 1. My first night at the factory felt wrong in ways I can't explain. The air in the factory was thick, like breathing through a damp cloth. It clung to my skin, heavy with the smell of rust and something sharper, something I couldn't quite place, like burnt hair or old chemicals. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Let me take you back to that first night, the night I walked into Halstead Manufacturing and felt the world tilt just a little off its axis. My name's Ethan, and I swear I never believed in ghosts or any of that nonsense. But after that shift, I'm not so sure anymore. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Me, Sarah, Marcus, and Lila, 4 of us, all desperate for work after the layoffs at the warehouse across town. Halstead was hiring night watchmen for their old factory, a sprawling beast of a building that had been churning out machine parts since the 1940s. The pay was decent, the hours quiet. "Just walk the floors, check the locks, keep the place secure," the hiring manager had said, his eyes darting like he was late for something. We didn't think much of it. A job's a job, right? But when we pulled into the gravel lot that first night, the factory loomed over us like it was waiting. Its windows were dark, some cracked, reflecting the moonlight in jagged slivers. The smokestack stabbed at the sky, silent but heavy with history. We stepped out of Marcus's beat-up van, our boots crunching on the gravel. Sarah, always the optimist, cracked a joke about the place looking like a horror movie set. Her laugh echoed, but it didn't feel right, like the sound got swallowed too fast. Marcus, the skeptic of the group, just snorted and adjusted his flashlight. "Let's get this over with," he muttered. Lila, quiet as always, clutched her thermos of coffee like it was a lifeline. Me, I felt a prickle on my neck, like someone was watching from one of those broken windows. I shook it off. First night jitters, I told myself. Inside, the factory was a maze of steel and shadows. The main floor stretched out under flickering fluorescent lights, rows of ancient machines standing like silent giants. Their surfaces were coated in grime, and the air carried a faint hum, even though the power to the machines had been cut years ago. Our job was simple: patrol the main floor, the storage rooms, and the upper catwalks every hour, then log it in the security office. Easy money. Or so we thought. We split up to cover more ground. Sarah and Marcus took the east wing, where the assembly lines were. Lila and I headed west, toward the storage rooms and the furnace area. The click of our boots echoed off the concrete, but every few steps, I swore I heard something else. A soft shuffle, like someone dragging their feet just out of sight. I glanced at Lila, but she was staring straight ahead, her lips pressed tight. "You hear that?" I whispered. She shook her head, but her grip on the thermos tightened. The storage rooms were worse. The air there was colder, heavy with the scent of mildew and something metallic. Rows of shelves held crates, some labeled with faded ink, others just sitting there, half open, like someone had been interrupted years ago. I shone my flashlight into one and saw a pile of rusted gears, glinting like teeth. That's when I heard it again, a low, breathy sound, like someone exhaling right behind me. I spun around, heart hammering, but there was nothing. Just Lila standing a few feet away, her eyes wide. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you feel that?" "Feel what?" I asked, but my mouth was dry. She didn't answer, just pointed to the floor. There in the dust were fresh footprints, not ours. They were smaller, barefoot, and they trailed off into the dark, toward the furnace room. My stomach twisted. "Probably just old prints," I said, but I didn't believe it. Lila didn't either. We followed the prints, because what else could we do? The furnace room was at the end of the hall, its door rusted shut, or so I thought. As we got closer, the air grew warmer, almost stifling, and that burnt smell got stronger. The door creaked, just a fraction, like it was inviting us in. Lila grabbed my arm. "Ethan, we shouldn't." But I was already pushing the door open, my flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Inside, the furnace loomed like a sleeping monster, its iron bulk pitted with age. The room was oppressively hot, but the furnace hadn't been used in decades. My beam caught something else. A pile of papers scattered on the floor, yellowed and curling. I knelt down, my hands shaking as I picked one up. It was a worker's log dated 1973, scrawled with frantic handwriting. It watches from the vents. "Don't look up." My blood ran cold. I glanced at the ceiling, where a rusted vent gaped like an open mouth. For a second, I thought I saw something move inside, a flicker of shadow, too quick to be sure. "Ethan!" Lila's voice snapped me back. She was staring at the furnace, her face pale. I followed her gaze and froze. The furnace door was open. Not wide, just a crack, but enough to show a faint reddish glow inside, pulsing like a heartbeat. That wasn't possible. The power was off. The furnace was dead. But that glow. It flickered, and I swear I heard a low guttural sound, like a chuckle from deep inside. I grabbed Lila's arm, pulling her back toward the door. "We're leaving," I said, my voice shaking. But as we turned, the door slammed shut. Not slowly, not like a draft. It slammed with a force that rattled the walls, and the lock clicked into place. My flashlight flickered, then died, plunging us into darkness except for that pulsing red glow. Lila screamed, and I fumbled for my radio to call Marcus and Sarah. Static. Nothing but static. And then faintly, a voice that wasn't theirs. "Stay," it whispered, low and raspy, like it was coming from the furnace itself. Panic clawed at my chest. I banged on the door, shouting for Marcus, for anyone. Lila was sobbing, her thermos clattering to the floor. The air grew hotter, the smell of burnt hair so thick I could taste it. And then from the furnace, that chuckle again, louder, closer. I turned, and in the red glow I saw it. A shape barely human crawling out of the furnace door. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted at a wrong angle, and its eyes, God, its eyes were empty, just black voids that seemed to pull me in. It moved toward us, slow and deliberate, its fingers scraping the concrete. I don't know how we got out. 1 minute I was frozen, staring at that thing. The next, the door was open and Lila was dragging me into the hall. We ran, our breaths ragged, until we found Marcus and Sarah in the main office. They looked shaken too. Sarah said they'd heard footsteps following them, but when they turned, no one was there. Marcus, pale as a ghost, said he'd seen a shadow move across the assembly line, even though his flashlight showed nothing. We didn't talk much after that. We logged the patrol, locked the office, and got the hell out. But as we drove away, I looked back at the factory. One of the broken windows flickered, like something was standing there, watching us leave. I haven't slept right since. The factory's still there, waiting for our next shift. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever's inside knows my name. Have you ever felt something watching you, something you couldn't see? Chapter 2. The machines hummed. Even though the power was cut off hours before, I don't know why we went back. After that first night at Halstead Manufacturing, the smart thing would have been to quit, to never set foot in that cursed factory again. But bills don't pay themselves, and something about that place, it pulls you in, like it's not done with you. I'm Ethan, and if you heard about our first night, you know we saw something in the furnace room. Something with 2 long limbs and eyes like black holes. We didn't talk about it after we left, not really. Sarah tried to laugh it off. Marcus got quieter than usual, and Lila's been checking the locks on her doors twice every night since. Me? I keep hearing that low chuckle from the furnace in my dreams. But we went back for our second shift, and God help us, it was worse. The factory looked different that night, like it was holding its breath. The gravel lot crunched under our boots, same as before, but the air felt heavier, like a storm was coming, though the sky was clear. The smokestacks stood like sentinels, and the broken windows glinted in the moonlight, sharper than they should have. That burnt hair smell was still there, faint but persistent, creeping into my nose as we approached the main entrance. Sarah, trying to keep things light, nudged me. "Ready for round 2, Ethan?" Her voice was too bright, like she was forcing it. Marcus just grunted, his flashlight already sweeping the dark. Lila clutched her thermos, new one since she'd dropped the last one running from that thing, and stayed close to me. Inside, the main floor was the same maze of rusted machines and flickering lights. The air was thick with dust, swirling in our flashlight beams like tiny ghosts. Our job was the same: patrol the floors, check the locks, log it in the office. But after last night, none of us wanted to split up. "We stick together," Marcus said, his voice low but firm. No one argued. We started on the main floor, moving past the assembly lines. The machines loomed over us, their gears and levers frozen in time, coated in grime. But as we walked, I noticed something. A low hum, barely audible, like a distant engine. I stopped, holding up a hand. "You guys hear that?" Sarah tilted her head, her ponytail swinging. "What? The lights buzzing?" But it wasn't the lights. This was deeper, vibrating through the floor into my bones. Lila's eyes darted to the machines. "That's not possible," she whispered. "The power's off. They shut it down years ago." Marcus, ever the skeptic, marched over to a control panel on the wall, yanking it open. The switches were down, the wires dark. "See? Dead," he said, but his voice wavered. The hum grew louder, unmistakable now, coming from the machines themselves. We moved closer to one of the old presses, its massive steel jaws glinting faintly. The hum was strongest there, pulsing like a heartbeat. I reached out stupidly and touched the metal. It was warm. Not hot, but warm, like it had been running all day. "This isn't right," I said, pulling my hand back. Sarah shone her flashlight on the machine, and we all froze. The gears were moving, slowly, grinding as if the machine was waking up. No power, no wires, no reason for it to move. Yet there it was, creaking to life, the sound scraping at my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. "Ethan, look." Lila's voice was a hiss. She pointed to the floor, where the dust was shifting, forming faint patterns. Spirals, like fingerprints, circling the base of the machine. They weren't there a minute ago. My stomach churned. "We need to get out of here," I said. But Marcus was already moving, his flashlight sweeping the room. "Wait," he said. "Listen." The hum wasn't just coming from one machine now. It was everywhere, a chorus of low mechanical drones filling the air like a swarm of insects. Every machine on the floor, presses, lathes, conveyors, was humming, their parts twitching, as if the factory itself was alive. We backed toward the exit, our breaths shallow. The air smelled stronger now, burnt hair mixed with something oily, like machine grease left to rot. That's when Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Ethan, the lights." I looked up. The fluorescent lights, already dim, were flickering in a pattern, like Morse code. On, off, faster and faster, until they stayed off for a full second. In that darkness I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping like fingers on metal, coming from the catwalks above. My flashlight beam shot upward, catching the glint of something moving. A shadow long and thin darted between the railings. "Too fast to be human. Run," Marcus shouted, and we bolted for the security office, the only place that felt remotely safe. The hum followed us, growing louder, the machines groaning as if angry we were leaving. The tapping kept pace, echoing from the catwalks, then the walls, then the floor beneath us. Lila tripped, her thermos skidding across the concrete. I hauled her up, my heart pounding so hard I thought it had burst. We reached the office, slamming the door behind us. Marcus fumbled with the lock, his hands shaking. "What the hell is this place?" he muttered, his usual bravado gone. The office was small, cramped, with a desk, a chair, and a wall of old security monitors, most of them busted. The hum was fainter here, but it didn't stop. Sarah sank into the chair, her face pale. "This isn't just a haunting," she said. "It's like the factory's awake." Lila was shaking, her eyes fixed on the floor. "It knows we're here," she whispered. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't. Not after what we'd seen. Then the monitors flickered on. Not all of them, just one, its grainy black and white feed showing the main floor. The machines were still, but the dust patterns had grown, spreading across the concrete like veins. And there, in the corner of the screen, was that shadow again. It stood by the press we'd touched, its head tilted at that unnatural angle, its limbs too long, just like the thing in the furnace room. It didn't move, just stared at the camera, its black eyes boring into us through the screen. The hum spiked, so loud it rattled the desk, and the monitor cut to static. Sarah screamed, and I grabbed the radio, desperate to call for help. Static again, but this time, words came through. Broken, distorted, but clear enough to make my blood freeze. "You woke it." The voice was the same raspy whisper from the furnace room. I dropped the radio and it hit the floor with a crack. The hum stopped. Dead silence. We waited, barely breathing, expecting the tapping to start again. It didn't, but when I looked at the monitor, the shadow was gone. The feed showed the main floor, empty, the dust patterns unchanged. We didn't leave the office until dawn. When we finally stepped outside, the air felt clean, like we'd escaped a tomb. But as we drove away, I saw something in the rearview mirror. A flicker in one of the factory's windows, like a hand pressing against the glass. "We're supposed to go back tonight. I don't know if I can." Chapter 3. I saw someone standing inside the furnace room, but no one was scheduled. I don't know how we keep doing this. 3 nights at Halstead Manufacturing, and each one feels like it's chipping away at us. I'm Ethan, and if you've been following, you know what we've been through. That first night, we saw something crawl out of the furnace, its eyes like voids. Last night, the machines came alive, humming with no power, while a shadow watched us from the catwalks.
We should have quit, but Sarah keeps saying we need the money. Marcus thinks we're imagining things, and Lila...
She's barely speaking now. Me? I can't shake the feeling that the factory's waiting for us to slip up. Tonight, though, something happened that I can't explain, and it's got me questioning everything. The air outside the factory was colder tonight, sharp enough to bite at my knuckles as we pulled into the gravel lot. The smokestacks loomed against a moonless sky, and the broken windows stared down like empty eyes. That burnt hair smell was back, stronger now, mixing with a faint metallic tang, like blood or rust. We stood by Marcus's van for a moment, none of us eager to go inside. Sarah tried to break the tension, her voice shaky. Third time's the charm, right? Nobody laughed. Lila clutched her new thermos, her eyes darting to the factory's entrance. Marcus just checked his flashlight, muttering, "Let's just do the rounds and get out. Inside." The main floor was the same maze of rusted machines, their silhouettes hulking under the flickering fluorescence. The hum from last night was gone, replaced by an oppressive silence that made every step echo like a gunshot. We stuck together again, no one suggesting we split up after what happened. Our patrol took us through the assembly lines, past the control panels, and toward the west wing, the storage rooms and the furnace area. My stomach knotted at the thought of going back there, but the job required it. Check every lock, log every room. As we approached the storage rooms, the air grew heavy, thick with that mildew and metal smell. The shelves loomed around us, crates still half open, their contents glinting in our flashlight beams. I kept my eyes on the floor, half expecting those strange dust patterns from last night to reappear. They didn't, but the silence felt wrong, like the factory was holding its breath. Lila stopped suddenly, her thermos trembling in her hands. "Ethan," she whispered, "do you smell that?" I did. The burnt hair smell was stronger here, almost choking, mixed with something sour, like spoiled milk. Marcus shone his light down the hall toward the furnace room. "Let's just check it and move on," he said, but his voice cracked. The furnace room door was closed, its rusted surface glinting faintly. I remembered that pulsing red glow from our first night, the thing that crawled out. My hand hesitated on the handle. "Maybe we skip this one," I said, half serious. Sarah shook her head. "We have to log it, Ethan. If we don't, they'll fire us." She was right, but every instinct screamed to turn back. Marcus pushed past me, yanking the door open. "Let's get it over with." The furnace room was dark, the air hot and stifling despite the cold outside. That burnt smell was overwhelming now, making my eyes water. Our flashlights cut through the gloom, landing on the massive furnace, its iron bulk pitted with age. The door was shut, no red glow this time. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "See?" "Nothing," Marcus said, but he didn't sound convinced. Lila stayed by the door, her eyes wide. "Let's go," she whispered. I nodded, ready to leave, when Sarah grabbed my arm. "Ethan, look." She was pointing at the far wall, where a pile of papers, worker logs like the one I'd found before, lay scattered. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. In the center of the room, just in front of the furnace, stood a figure. A man, or something like one, facing away from us. He was tall, his shoulders hunched, wearing what looked like an old factory uniform, tattered and stained. His head was tilted slightly, as if listening. My flashlight beam shook as I aimed it at him. "Hey!" I called, my voice echoing. "No one's supposed to be here." He didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there, still as death. Marcus stepped forward, his bravado kicking in. "Yo, you deaf? Get out!" The figure shifted, just a fraction, and I saw his hands. Pale, too long, fingers curling like claws. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Marcus, don't!" I hissed, but he was already moving closer. That's when the figure turned, slow and deliberate, and I wished he hadn't. His face was wrong, skin too tight, eyes too large, black and empty, like the thing we'd seen before. But this wasn't the same. This was human, or had been once. Sarah screamed, and the figure's head snapped toward her, its mouth stretching into a grin that was too wide, showing teeth that gleamed like polished metal. The air grew hotter, the burnt smell so thick I gagged. Lila was already backing out, sobbing, "It's not real, it's not real," but it was. I could see the dust shifting under its feet, hear the faint rasp of its breath. Marcus froze, his flashlight dropping to the floor with a clatter. The figure took a step toward us, its movements jerky, like a puppet on strings. And then I heard it, a low, guttural chuckle, the same one from the furnace, echoing from the walls, from the figure, from everywhere. "Run," I shouted, grabbing Sarah's arm. We stumbled back, Marcus scrambling to follow, Lila already halfway down the hall. The door slammed shut behind us, just like before, but this time it didn't lock. We kept running, the chuckle chasing us, growing louder until it felt like it was inside my head. The machines on the main floor were silent, but the air vibrated, like the factory was laughing with it. We didn't stop until we reached the security office, piling inside and locking the door. Sarah was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "What was that thing?" she whispered. Marcus, pale as a ghost, just shook his head. Lila sat in the corner, rocking back and forth, muttering about the eyes. I checked the security monitors, praying they'd show nothing. But one flickered on, showing the furnace room. The figure was gone, but the furnace door was open again, that red glow pulsing faintly. And on the floor, where the figure had stood, was a single sheet of paper. I couldn't see the writing, but I knew it was another log, another warning we'd ignored. We stayed in the office until dawn, too scared to move. The chuckle faded, but the air stayed heavy, like the factory was watching, waiting. When we left, the morning light felt like a lie, too bright for what we'd seen. "We're supposed to go back tomorrow. I don't know if I can face that room again, or what's waiting inside." Chapter 4. The security cameras showed me working while I sat watching the screens. I'm Ethan, and I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. 4 nights at Halstead Manufacturing, and each one feels like it's pulling us deeper into something we can't escape. After that first night in the furnace room with that thing crawling out, then the machines humming with no power, and last night, seeing that figure with its too wide grin and black eyes, none of us are okay. Sarah's optimism is gone, replaced by a nervous edge. Marcus, the skeptic, barely talks now, his hands always fidgeting. Lila's a ghost of herself, jumping at every sound. Me? I can't close my eyes without seeing those empty eyes or hearing that chuckle. But we went back. I don't know why. Maybe the factory's got its hooks in us, like it won't let us go. Tonight, the air outside was bitter, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. The gravel crunched under our boots as we approached Halstead's looming silhouette, its smokestacks clawing at the starless sky. That burnt hair smell was there, sharper now, mixed with something acrid, like chemicals left to fester. The broken windows glinted, catching the faint glow of our flashlights, and I swear one of them flickered, like something moved behind the glass. Sarah tried to say something, maybe a joke, but it died in her throat. Lila clutched her thermos so tight her knuckles were white. Marcus just stared at the entrance, his jaw tight. "Let's make this quick," he muttered. Inside, the main floor was a labyrinth of shadows, the rusted machines standing like silent judges. The fluorescent lights buzzed, weaker than before, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. The silence was heavy, no hum tonight, but that made it worse, like the factory was waiting for us to make a mistake. We stuck together, our footsteps echoing off the concrete, moving toward the security office first. None of us wanted to go near the furnace room again, not after last night. "We check the monitors, log the rounds, and get out," I said, trying to sound confident. Nobody argued. The office was a small, claustrophobic box, its walls stained with age, the air thick with dust and that faint metallic tang. The desk was cluttered with old papers, and the bank of security monitors flickered, most of them showing nothing but static. We sat down, our flashlights propped up to light the room. Sarah pulled out the logbook, her hands shaking as she wrote. Lila sat in the corner, sipping her coffee, her eyes darting to the door every few seconds. Marcus stared at the monitors, his face pale. "Let's just watch the feeds and call it a night," he said. I nodded, but my stomach was in knots. Something felt off, like the air was too still, too heavy. That's when it happened. One of the monitors flickered, showing the main floor, the assembly lines bathed in dim light. At first it looked normal, just rows of machines, dust swirling in the air. Then I saw it, a figure moving between the presses carrying a flashlight. My heart stopped. It was me. My jacket, my boots, the way I tilt my head when I'm nervous. It was me. walking the floor, checking the machines. But I was sitting right here in the office, staring at the screen. "Guys," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Look." Sarah leaned over, her breath catching. "Ethan, that's you." Marcus swore under his breath, his eyes glued to the monitor. Lila dropped her thermos, coffee spilling across the floor. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, no, no." The figure on the screen moved with purpose, stopping at a control panel, just like I would on a patrol. It reached out, its hand, my hand, touching the switches. The lights in the office flickered, and that burnt smell surged, so strong I gagged. "That's not me," I said, but my voice sounded hollow, like I was trying to convince myself. The monitor flickered again, and now the figure was closer to the camera, its face just out of frame. My face. I could see the edge of my jaw, the collar of my jacket. But something was wrong. Its movements were too smooth, too deliberate, like it was mimicking me but not quite getting it right. Then it turned slowly and looked at the camera. Its eyes were black, empty, like the thing in the furnace room. My face, but not me. It grinned, a slow, unnatural stretch of lips, and the monitor cut to static. Sarah screamed, scrambling back from the desk. Marcus grabbed his flashlight, swinging it like a weapon. "What the hell is that thing?" he shouted. Lila was sobbing, curled up in the corner. I couldn't move, my eyes locked on the blank screen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it'd burst. The air grew hotter, the chemical smell mixing with that burnt hair stench, making my head spin. Then the radio crackled, spitting static, and that voice came through, the same raspy whisper from before. "You can't leave," it said, and I swear it sounded like me, like my own voice twisted into something wrong. I forced myself to stand, grabbing the logbook. "We're done. We're leaving." But as I said it, the monitors flickered back on, all of them now, showing different parts of the factory. Every screen showed me, or whatever that thing was, walking the floors, checking locks, moving through the storage rooms, even standing outside the furnace room. But it wasn't just one. There were multiple figures, all wearing my face, my clothes, scattered across the factory. Some were in places we hadn't checked yet, places we couldn't have reached. And they were all grinning, those black eyes staring straight into the cameras, straight at us. "We need to go," Sarah said, her voice breaking. Marcus was already at the door, yanking it open, but he stopped dead. "Ethan," he whispered, pointing down the hall. I looked and my blood ran cold. There, at the end of the corridor, stood another me. Not on a screen, but real, flesh and blood, standing under a flickering light. It was holding a flashlight just like mine, but its head was tilted at that wrong angle, its grin too wide. It didn't move, just watched us, its eyes swallowing the light. Lila screamed, and Marcus slammed the door shut, locking it. The monitors kept flickering, showing more of those things. Me, but not me. Moving closer, their footsteps silent but deliberate. The office felt smaller, the walls closing in, the air so thick with that burnt smell I could barely breathe. Then the monitors showed something new. The furnace room, its door wide open, that red glow pulsing brighter than ever. And inside, standing in the glow, was the figure from last night, the one with the two long limbs. It wasn't alone. Dozens of shapes, all wearing my face, stood around it, their black eyes fixed on the camera. The radio crackled again. "Join us," it whispered in my voice. I dropped it, the plastic cracking on the floor. Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Ethan, what do we do?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know. I didn't know how to fight something wearing my face, something that knew my every move. We stayed in the office, barricading the door with the desk, waiting for dawn. The monitors went dark eventually, but the smell lingered, and every creak of the factory made us jump. When morning came, we ran, not looking back. But as we drove away, I saw it in the rearview mirror, a figure standing in the lot wearing my jacket watching us go. I don't know what's real anymore. Chapter 5. I found a locked office filled with time cards from workers who never existed. I'm Ethan, and I don't know how to explain what's happening to us. 5 nights at Halstead Manufacturing, and it feels like we're unraveling. That first night, we saw something crawl out of the furnace, its black eyes burning into us. Then the machines hummed with no power. Shadows moved on their own, and last night, security cameras showed me walking the floors when I was sitting in the office. Dozens of things wearing my face, grinning at us through the screens. Sarah's a wreck, her usual cheer replaced by fear. Marcus is angry, snapping at everything. Lila barely speaks, her eyes always on the exits. Me? I'm terrified, but something keeps pulling us back to this factory, like it's not done with us yet. Tonight, though, I found something that makes me think we're not just fighting ghosts. The air outside was icy, the kind of cold that stings your face and makes your breath fog. The gravel lot crunched under our boots as we approached Halstead's hulking silhouette, its smokestacks black against the night sky. That burnt hair smell was there, sharp and sour, mixed with a faint whiff of something like old paper, musty and decayed. The broken windows glinted, catching our flashlight beams, and I swore one flickered, like a figure stood behind it. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "We don't have to do this, Ethan." But we did. The factory's grip on us felt stronger than ever, like walking away wasn't an option anymore. Inside, the main floor was a maze of shadows, the rusted machines silent under flickering fluorescence. The air was thick with dust, swirling in our beams like it was alive. No hum tonight, no tapping, just a heavy silence that pressed against my ears. We stuck together, moving toward the security office, our footsteps echoing too loud. "No furnace room tonight," Marcus said, his voice tight. We check the logs, watch the monitors, and leave. Lila nodded, clutching her thermos like a shield. Sarah's eyes darted to every shadow, her hands trembling. I wanted to agree, but something felt wrong, like the factory was watching, waiting for us to slip. We reached the office, its cramped walls and stained desk feeling like a cage. The monitors were dark, thank God, but the air was heavy with that musty paper smell, stronger now. Sarah opened the logbook, her pen shaking as she wrote. Lila sat in the corner, sipping coffee, her eyes fixed on the door. Marcus paced, his flashlight beam jittery. I was about to suggest we skip the patrol when I noticed it. A door in the office we hadn't seen before, tucked behind a stack of crates. It was metal, rusted, with a heavy padlock. "Guys," I said, pointing. "What's that?" Marcus frowned, shining his light on it. "Was that always there?" Sarah shook her head. "No way. We've been in here every night." Lila's voice was barely audible. "Don't touch it, Ethan." But I was already moving, my curiosity outweighing my fear. The lock was old, the keyhole scratched like someone had tried to pick it. I grabbed a crowbar from a toolbox in the corner, my hands sweating. "Ethan, don't," Sarah said, but I couldn't stop. The factory wanted us to find something. I could feel it. The lock snapped with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow hallway, its walls lined with peeling paint. The musty smell hit me like a wave, mixed with that burnt hair stench. Our flashlights barely cut through the dark, showing a small room at the end of the hall. We stepped inside, our breaths shallow. The room was an office, smaller than the one we'd come from, with a desk, a chair, and shelves packed with boxes. Papers littered the floor, yellowed and curling, and the air was so thick with dust I could taste it. I picked up a paper from the desk. It was a time card, dated 1968, with a name, Thomas Reed. The hours were logged in neat handwriting, 7 p.m. to 3 a.m., night shift. I grabbed another. Margaret Hale, 1972. Another. James Carver, 1959. Dozens of time cards, all from different years, some as recent as 1990. "These are workers," I said, my voice shaking. "But I've never heard these names." Sarah rifled through a box, her face pale. "Ethan, there's hundreds of them." Marcus was at the shelves pulling down more boxes. "This doesn't make sense. The factory's records only list a few dozen employees ever." He opened a file, his eyes narrowing. "These names, they're not in the hiring logs. It's like these people never existed." Lila was frozen by the door, her thermos trembling. "Then who were they?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer, but the air grew hotter, the burnt smell sharper, like the factory was angry we'd found this place. That's when I noticed the desk drawer, slightly ajar. I pulled it open, and inside was a single photograph, faded and creased. It showed a group of workers in old uniforms, standing in front of the furnace. Their faces were wrong, too pale, eyes too large, like the figure we'd seen. And in the corner, scrawled in red ink, "They stay." My heart pounded. I showed it to the others and Sarah gasped. "That's the furnace room," she said. "Look at the background." She was right. The same rusted iron, the same faint red glow. The lights in the room flickered, and that chuckle started again, low, guttural, coming from the walls. Lila screamed, dropping her thermos. The air was stifling now, the musty smell choking us. "We need to go," Marcus said, grabbing a handful of time cards. But as we turned, the door to the hallway slammed shut, the lock clicking into place. My flashlight flickered, then died, leaving us in near darkness except for Sarah's beam. The chuckle grew louder, joined by whispers, names, dozens of them, overlapping. Thomas. Margaret. James. The voices weren't human, too raspy, too fast, like the factory itself was speaking. I banged on the door, panic clawing at me. "Open it!" Sarah was sobbing, Marcus swearing as he tried to pry it with the crowbar. Lila was curled up, muttering, "They're here. They're here." The whispers grew louder, the names piling on. And I saw it. Shadows moving in the corners. Shapes with two long limbs, their faces blurred but familiar. Like the workers in the photo. They didn't approach, just watched, their black eyes glinting. The temperature spiked, the air so hot it burned my lungs, and that burnt hair smell was unbearable. I don't know how we got out. 1 minute the door was locked, the shadows closing in. The next it swung open, and we were stumbling into the main office, gasping for air. The monitors were on, showing the locked office, empty now, but the time cards were scattered across the floor, the photograph gone. Marcus still clutched a few cards, his hands shaking. "What the hell is this place?" he whispered. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide. "Those weren't workers, Ethan. There's something else." We didn't leave the office until dawn, too scared to move. The whispers faded, but the air stayed heavy, like the factory was waiting. When we left, I looked back and saw a figure in a window. Not me this time, but one of those workers, its face pale and wrong, watching us go. "We're supposed to return tomorrow. I don't know if I can." Chapter 6. The old blueprints revealed entire floors hidden beneath the factory grounds. I'm Ethan, and I'm not sure how much more of this we can take. 6 nights at Halstead Manufacturing, and each one drags us deeper into something we don't understand. The furnace thing with its black eyes, the machines humming without power, the figure with my face on the cameras, and last night, those time cards from workers who never existed, their names whispered by the factory itself. Sarah's barely holding it together, her eyes red from crying. Marcus is a bundle of nerves, his skepticism crumbling. Lila's so quiet it's like she's fading away. Me? I'm scared, but I keep seeing those faces in my dreams, the ones from the photograph, and I can't shake the feeling the factory wants us to know something. Tonight we found out just how deep its secrets go. The night was freezing, the kind of cold that makes your breath catch and your fingers ache. The gravel lot crunched under our boots as we approached Halstead, its silhouette looming like a beast ready to swallow us. That burnt hair smell was there, sharp and bitter, now mixed with something earthy, like damp soil after rain. The broken windows glinted in our flashlight beams, and I caught a flicker in one, like a shadow passing too quickly to be sure. Sarah's voice was barely audible. "We shouldn't be here, Ethan." Lila clutched her thermos, her eyes fixed on the ground. Marcus gripped his crowbar, his knuckles white. "One more night," he said, but it sounded like he was convincing himself. Inside, the main floor was a maze of rusted machines, the fluorescent lights flickering weaker than ever, casting jagged shadows that seemed to writhe. The air was thick with dust and that earthy smell, heavy and suffocating. We headed straight for the security office, no one suggesting a patrol. The furnace room, the locked office. We weren't going near those places tonight. "We watch the monitors, log it, and leave," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Nobody argued. The silence was oppressive, broken only by our footsteps echoing off the concrete. The office felt smaller than ever, its stained walls closing in, the air thick with that musty, earthy scent. The monitors were dark, and we left them that way, too scared to see what they might show. Sarah opened the logbook, her hands trembling as she wrote. Lila sat in the corner sipping coffee, her eyes darting to the door. Marcus paced, clutching the time cards he'd taken last night, their edges crumpled. I was about to suggest we leave early when I noticed something, a loose panel in the wall behind the desk, slightly ajar. "Guys, look at this," I said, pointing. Marcus frowned, shining his flashlight on it. "That wasn't there before," he muttered. I pried the panel open with the crowbar, revealing a small compartment stuffed with papers. Not time cards this time, blueprints, yellowed and brittle, their edges curling like dead leaves. I pulled one out, spreading it on the desk. It was a map of Halstead, but not the factory we knew. It showed the main floor, the storage rooms, the furnace area, but also entire levels beneath the ground, basements, tunnels, chambers labeled with strange symbols I didn't recognize.
What the hell?
Sarah whispered, leaning over.
This says there's 3 sublevels under us. Marcus traced a finger over a tunnel marked Access Restricted. No one's ever mentioned basements, he said.
His voice low. Lila's eyes widened, her thermos trembling. We're not supposed to see this, she whispered. I ignored her, flipping through more blueprints. One showed a large chamber labeled Containment, with what looked like a circular platform in the center, surrounded by those same symbols. Another had handwritten notes scrawled in the margins. They must stay below. Don't open the seals. My stomach twisted. The earthy smell grew stronger, like the ground itself was breathing, and that burnt hair stench crept in, making my head spin. These aren't just plans, I said. This is something else. That's when the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for a second before buzzing back on. The air grew heavy, almost damp, and I heard it. A low rhythmic thumping like a heartbeat coming from below the floor. You hear that? I asked, my voice shaking. Sarah nodded, her face pale. Marcus gripped the crowbar tighter. It's coming from under us, he said. Lila was shaking, her coffee spilling. We need to leave now, she said, but her voice was drowned out by a new sound, scratching, like nails dragging across metal, coming from the walls, the floor, everywhere. I grabbed the blueprints, stuffing them into my jacket. We're going, I said, but as we turned for the door, the monitors flickered on. Every screen showed the same image, a dark, cavernous space, not the main floor or the furnace room, but something deeper, underground. The chamber from the blueprint, its walls carved with those symbols glowing faintly red. And in the center, on that circular platform, stood figures. Dozens of them, pale and wrong, their faces like the workers from the photograph, their black eyes staring up at the camera. They weren't moving, just standing, but I swore they were closer than they should have been. The thumping grew louder, shaking the desk, and the scratching turned into whispers. Names again. Thomas, Margaret, James, mixed with that raspy chuckle we knew too well. The air was stifling, the earthy smell so thick I could taste dirt, and the burnt hair stench burned my throat. Sarah grabbed my arm. Ethan, they're here! I looked at the monitors again, and now the figures were moving, their long limbs jerking as they climbed the walls, crawling toward the camera. One turned its head, its grin stretching too wide, and I saw my face again, twisted and wrong. Marcus swung the crowbar at the door, desperate to get out, but it wouldn't budge. The lock was jammed, the handle hot to the touch. Lila was sobbing, curled up in the corner. They're coming up, she whispered. The thumping was deafening now, like something massive was pounding its way through the earth below. I grabbed a chair, smashing it against the door, and it finally gave, splintering open. We ran, the blueprints clutched to my chest, the whispers and thumping chasing us down the hall. The machines on the main floor were still, but the shadows seemed to writhe, and I swore I saw those figures, pale, grinning, crawling along the catwalks above. We didn't stop until we reached the van, piling in and speeding away. The factory shrank in the rearview mirror, but I saw it, a window flickering, a pale face watching us go. I looked at the blueprints in my lap, their symbols burned into my mind. Whatever's under Halstead, it's not just a basement. It's something alive, something that wants us. Chapter 7. Something crawled out of the conveyor belts and whispered my name. I'm Ethan, and I don't know why we keep coming back to Halstead Manufacturing. 7 nights now, and each one feels like a step closer to losing ourselves. The furnace thing with its void-like eyes. The machines humming without power, my own face staring back from the cameras, the timecards of workers who never existed. And last night, those blueprints showing hidden floors beneath the factory, pulsing with something alive. Sarah's a shadow of herself, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus is all rage now, his hands always clenched. Lila's so withdrawn she's like a ghost. Me? I'm terrified, but those blueprints are burning a hole in my mind. The factory's hiding something, and tonight it showed us just how close it's getting. The air outside was raw, a damp cold that clung to our skin as we pulled into the gravel lot. Halstead loomed, its smokestacks stabbing the night sky, the broken windows glinting like teeth in our flashlight beams. That burnt hair smell was back, sharper, mixed with a sickly sweet rot, like something decaying just out of sight. A window flickered, a shadow moving behind the glass, too quick to be sure. Sarah's breath hitched. "We don't have to do this," she said, but her voice was hollow. Lila clutched her thermos, her eyes glazed. Marcus gripped his crowbar, muttering, "One last time." I wanted to believe him, but the blueprints in my jacket pocket felt heavy, like they were pulling me back inside. The main floor was a labyrinth of rusted machines, the fluorescent lights buzzing so faintly they barely pushed back the dark. The air was thick with dust and that rotting smell, making my throat burn. No hum tonight, no thumping from below, just a silence so deep it felt like the factory was holding its breath. We headed for the security office, our footsteps echoing like gunshots. "No patrols," I said, clutching the blueprints. "We check the logs, figure out what's under us, and leave." Marcus nodded, but his eyes were wild. Lila didn't speak, just followed, her thermos trembling. Sarah kept glancing behind us like she expected something to follow. The office was stifling, its walls stained, the air heavy with that sweet rot and burnt hair. The monitors were off, and we didn't touch them, too scared of seeing my face, or worse, staring back. I spread the blueprints on the desk, their symbols glowing faintly under my flashlight, like they were etched in something other than ink. "This chamber," I said, pointing to the containment room on the map. "It's directly below the main floor. There's got to be an access point." Marcus snorted, but it lacked conviction. "What, you want to go digging for it?" Sarah shook her head. "We need to know what's down there, Marcus. Those things, they're not just ghosts." Before we could argue, a sound cut through the silence, a low grinding screech like metal dragging on metal, coming from the main floor. We froze, flashlights sweeping the doorway. The sound came again, louder from the assembly lines. "The conveyor belts," Lila whispered, her voice barely audible. My heart pounded. Those belts hadn't moved in decades, rusted solid. But the screeching continued, rhythmic like they were running. Marcus grabbed his crowbar. "We need to check it," he said, his voice tight. I wanted to say no, but the blueprints felt like they were burning in my hands, urging me forward. We crept out, the air growing thicker, the rotting smell so strong I gagged. The main floor was darker now, the lights flickering out one by one. The screeching was deafening, coming from the central conveyor line, a massive belt that once carried parts across the factory. Our flashlights caught it moving, slowly, jerkily, its rusted surface grinding against itself. No power, no reason for it to move. Dust swirled around it, forming those spiral patterns we'd seen before, glowing faintly in the dark. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Ethan, look!" Something was on the belt, a shape, low and crawling, its limbs too long, its body twisted like it wasn't built right. It moved with the conveyor, its pale skin glinting, its head tilted at that wrong angle. My flashlight beam hit its face and I froze. It was one of them, the workers from the timecards, the photograph, the monitors. Its eyes were black voids, its mouth stretched into a grin that showed too many teeth. And then it spoke, a raspy whisper that cut through the screeching. "Ethan." My name, in a voice that wasn't human, like it was mocking me. Lila screamed, dropping her thermos, coffee splashing across the concrete. Marcus swung his crowbar, shouting, "Stay back!" The thing didn't flinch, just kept crawling, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. The conveyor sped up, the screeching turning into a wail, and more shapes appeared, dozens, crawling out from under the belts, from the shadows of the machines. They all had those pale, wrong faces, their black eyes fixed on us, whispering my name in a chorus that made my skin crawl. "Ethan, Ethan, Ethan, run!" I shouted, grabbing Sarah's arm. We bolted for the office, the whispers chasing us, the air so thick with rot and burnt hair I could barely breathe. The conveyor's wail followed, the shadows moving faster, their long fingers scraping the concrete. We reached the office, slamming the door, Marcus wedging the crowbar under the handle. Lila was sobbing, curled up in the corner. Sarah clutched the blueprints, her face pale. "They know you, Ethan," she whispered. "Why you?" I didn't know. My head was spinning, the whispers still echoing in my ears. The monitors flickered on, showing the main floor. The conveyor was still, but the shapes were everywhere, crawling over the machines, their faces pressed against the cameras, grinning.
One held a time card, the name Ethan scrawled in red ink. My stomach dropped. "That's not possible," I said, but the blueprints on the desk glowed brighter, the symbols pulsing like a heartbeat. The air grew hotter, the rotting smell overwhelming, and that chuckle started again. Low, guttural, coming from below the floor. The door rattled, like something was testing it. The whispers grew louder, my name over and over, mixed with those other names. Thomas, Margaret, James. Marcus pounded the desk, shouting, "What do they want?" I grabbed the blueprints, my hands shaking. "The chamber," I said. "It's down there. Whatever they are, it's coming from below." Lila's voice was a whimper. "We can't go down there." "Ethan." But the door rattled again, harder, and the monitors showed those things closer now, their black eyes filling the screens. We didn't move until dawn, the door holding, the whispers fading as light crept through the windows. When we left, the factory was silent, but I saw it, a pale hand pressed against a broken window, its fingers too long, my name scratched into the glass. Those blueprints are still with me, and I know we have to go back. Chapter 8. The former night watchman's logbook. Warn me about what comes after midnight. I'm Ethan, and I don't know how we're still doing this. 8 nights at Halstead Manufacturing, and it's like the factory's alive, picking us apart. The thing in the furnace, the machines moving on their own, my face on the cameras, time cards for workers who never existed, blueprints of hidden floors, and last night, those things crawling out of the conveyor belts, whispering my name. Sarah's barely holding on, her eyes hollow. Marcus is a live wire, ready to snap. Lila's so quiet, I'm scared she's giving up. Me? I'm terrified, but those blueprints and that name, my name, scratched into the glass keep pulling me back. Tonight, we found something that makes it clear we're not alone, and someone else knew it long before us. The night was bitter, the air so cold it burned my lungs as we pulled into the gravel lot. Halstead's silhouette loomed, its smokestacks black against a cloudy sky, the broken windows glinting like eyes in our flashlight beams. That burnt hair smell was there, sharp and sour, now mixed with something like old leather, dry and cracked. A window flickered, a shadow darting behind it, and my stomach twisted. Sarah's voice was a whisper. "We can't keep doing this, Ethan." Lila clutched her thermos, her hands shaking. Marcus gripped his crowbar, his jaw tight. "Last night," he said, "we get answers, or we're done." I nodded. The blueprints heavy in my jacket, but I wasn't sure we'd like what we found. Inside, the main floor was a maze of rusted machines, the fluorescent lights buzzing so faintly they barely lit the dust swirling in the air. The silence was heavy, no hum or thumping, just that oppressive quiet that made every step echo. The rotting smell followed us, clinging to the air like a stain. We headed for the security office, avoiding the conveyor belts and furnace room. "No patrols," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We figure out what's under us and get out." Sarah nodded, but her eyes were wide with fear. Lila didn't speak, just followed, her thermos trembling. Marcus clutched the time cards from the locked office, his knuckles white. The office was a claustrophobic box, its walls stained, the air thick with that leather and rot smell. The monitors were off, and we didn't touch them, too scared of seeing those grinning faces again. I spread the blueprints on the desk, their symbols glowing faintly, like they were alive. "The containment chamber," I said, pointing to the sublevel map. "There's an access point somewhere on the main floor." Marcus snorted, but it was forced. "What, we're gonna dig through concrete?" Before I could answer, Lila gasped, pointing to the desk. Tucked under the logbook was something new, a small leather-bound notebook. Its cover cracked and faded, labeled Night Watchman's Log, 1983. My heart pounded as I opened it. The pages were brittle, filled with tight, frantic handwriting. June 12, 1983, the first entry read. "They come after midnight. Don't look at them. Don't say their names," I read aloud, my voice shaking. "They watch from the vents, the shadows, the belts. They know you're here." Sarah's breath hitched. "Who wrote this?" I flipped to the last page, dated July 1st, 1983. "They're in the sublevels. The seals are breaking. If you find this, don't go below. They'll take you." It was signed Henry Walsh, Night Watchman. Marcus swore, pacing. This guy knew about them, the things we've seen. Lila's voice was barely audible. "He didn't make it, did he?" I didn't answer, but the leather smell was stronger now, like the notebook was bleeding it into the air.
The logbook warned about midnight, and my watch read 11:55, 5 minutes. The air grew heavier, the rot smell mixing with burnt hair, making my eyes water. Then we heard it, a low grinding screech like the conveyor belt starting up again, coming from the main floor. We froze, flashlights sweeping the doorway. The screeching grew louder, joined by that familiar chuckle, low and guttural, echoing through the walls. "It's them," Sarah whispered, her hands trembling. I grabbed the notebook, stuffing it into my jacket with the blueprints. "We need to find that access point before—" My words cut off as the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness. The monitors flickered on, showing the main floor, the conveyor belts moving, shadows crawling across them. Pale figures, their limbs too long, their faces wrong, grinned at the cameras, their black eyes glinting. One held a time card, my name scrawled in red. The clock hit midnight, and the air changed. Hotter, thicker, like we were breathing dirt. The chuckle became a chorus, whispering names. Thomas, Margaret, James. Ethan, my name over and over in that raspy, mocking voice. The door rattled like something was testing it. Marcus swung his crowbar, shouting, "Stay back!" Lila was sobbing, curled up in the corner. Sarah grabbed my arm. "The blueprints, Ethan. Where's the access?" I fumbled with the map, my hands shaking, and found it, a hatch near the assembly lines hidden under a machine. We ran, the whispers chasing us, the screeching belts deafening. The main floor was a nightmare, the lights flickering out, the air thick with rot and leather. The machines loomed, their shadows twisting like living things. We found the hatch, a rusted metal plate under a press, its edges carved with those glowing symbols. Marcus pried it open, the crowbar screaming against the metal. Below was a dark tunnel, the air rushing up like a sigh, carrying that earthy smell from the blueprints. The whispers grew louder, my name a chant, and I saw them, shapes crawling from the belts, their black eyes fixed on us, their grins stretching too wide. "Down," I shouted, pushing Sarah toward the hatch. Lila hesitated, her eyes wide with terror. "We can't go down there," she cried, but the figures were closing in, their long fingers scraping the concrete. Marcus shoved her through, and we followed, dropping into the tunnel. The hatch slammed shut above us, the sound echoing like a coffin lid. The tunnel was narrow, its walls damp and carved with more symbols, glowing faintly red. The air was stifling, the rot smell overwhelming, and the whispers followed, fainter but still there, my name echoing in the dark. We stumbled forward, our flashlights barely cutting through the gloom. The tunnel sloped downward, toward what I knew was the containment chamber. The notebook's warning rang in my head. "Don't go below!" But we had no choice. The thumping started again, like a heartbeat from deeper in, shaking the walls. Sarah clutched my arm, her voice a whisper. "Ethan, what did Henry see?" I didn't know, but the notebook felt heavy in my pocket, like it was part of this place. We reached a sealed door, its surface etched with symbols, pulsing red. The whispers stopped, replaced by a single voice. Mine, but wrong, raspy. "Welcome," it said from beyond the door. We didn't open it. We turned and ran back, climbing the hatch, the factory silent as we stumbled into the dawn. Those figures were gone, but I saw my name scratched into the hatch, fresh and deep. Chapter 9. I discovered what was really being manufactured inside the factory walls. I'm Ethan, and I don't know how we've made it this far. 9 nights at Halstead Manufacturing, and each one has torn us apart a little more. The thing in the furnace, the machines humming without power, my face on the cameras, time cards for workers who never existed, blueprints of hidden sublevels, things crawling from the conveyor belts whispering my name. And last night, Henry Walsh's logbook, warning us about what comes after midnight. Sarah's a wreck, her hands shaking constantly. Marcus is all fury, barely holding it together. Lila's so far gone she barely looks at us. Me? I'm terrified, but the blueprints in that notebook are like a pull I can't resist. Tonight we went below, and what I found makes me wish we'd never come back. The night was brutal, the air so cold it stung my face as we pulled into Halstead's gravel lot. The factory loomed, its smokestacks black against a starless sky, the broken windows glinting like they were watching us. That burnt hair smell was there, sharp and sour, now mixed with something metallic like blood or molten steel. A window flickered, a pale shape darting behind it, and my heart sank. Sarah's voice was barely audible. "This is it, Ethan. We end this tonight." Lila clutched her thermos, her eyes empty. Marcus gripped his crowbar, his face hard. "We find that chamber," he said, "and we're done." I nodded, the blueprints and notebook heavy in my jacket, but I wasn't sure we'd survive what was waiting. Inside, the main floor was a maze of rusted machines, the fluorescent lights flickering so faintly they barely touched the shadows. The air was thick with dust and that metallic smell, so strong it coated my tongue. The silence was suffocating, no hum, no whispers, just our footsteps echoing like we were trespassing in a tomb. We headed straight for the hatch under the press, the one from the blueprints leading to the sublevels. No one spoke, but I could feel the tension, like the factory was holding its breath, waiting for us to cross a line. The hatch creaked as Marcus pried it open, the symbols carved into its surface glowing faintly red. The air rushing up was hot, heavy with that metallic tang and something new, something like decay, sweet and sickening. We descended, our flashlights cutting through the dark tunnel, its walls damp and etched with those same symbols, pulsing like veins. The notebook's warning echoed in my head, "Don't go below." But we'd seen too much, heard too much. We needed answers. The tunnel sloped downward, the thumping from last night starting again, a slow heartbeat shaking the walls. Lila whimpered, her thermos trembling. Sarah grabbed my hand, her grip tight.
"Whatever's down there," she whispered. "We face it together." The tunnel ended at the sealed door from last night, its surface covered in glowing symbols, the air so hot it burned my lungs.
The metallic smell was overwhelming, mixed with that rotting sweetness, like something alive and dying at the same time. The door was heavy, iron, its surface warm to the touch. Marcus hesitated, crowbar in hand. "You sure about this, Ethan?" I wasn't, but I nodded, clutching the notebook.
"We need to know." He pried the door open.
The hinges screaming, and a wave of heat hit us, carrying that stench, metal, rot, and something chemical, like burning plastic. Beyond was the containment chamber from the blueprints, a vast cavernous space, its walls carved with symbols that glowed bright red, pulsing in time with the thumping. In the center was a circular platform surrounded by strange machinery, tubes, vats, and gears that looked nothing like the factory above. The air shimmered with heat, and the smell was unbearable, like blood and decay mixed with molten steel. Scattered across the floor were papers, more time cards, photographs and logs, all bearing names we'd heard whispered: Thomas, Margaret, James, and mine, over and over, scrawled in red ink. That's when I saw it. The vats were filled with a dark, viscous liquid, bubbling faintly, glowing red like the furnace. Shapes moved inside, human-like but wrong, their limbs too long, their faces pale and eyeless, forming and dissolving in the liquid. The machinery hummed, not like the machines above, but like something alive, pumping the liquid through tubes into molds that looked like human forms. "They're making them," I whispered, my voice shaking. "The workers, the things we've seen, they're manufacturing them." Sarah gagged, her hand over her mouth.
"What is this place?"
Marcus swore, his crowbar trembling. Lila was frozen, staring at the vats, her thermos slipping from her hands. The thumping grew louder, the cymbals pulsing faster, and that chuckle started again, low, guttural, coming from the platform. A figure stood there, tall and pale, its face a twisted version of mine, its black eyes glinting. It wasn't alone. Dozens of shapes emerged from the shadows, their faces matching the time cards, their grins too wide, their limbs bending wrong. They moved toward us, slow and deliberate, whispering my name in that raspy chorus. "Ethan, Ethan, Ethan." "Run!" Marcus shouted, swinging his crowbar at the nearest figure. It didn't flinch, its grin widening as it grabbed the crowbar, its fingers cold and slick. Sarah pulled Lila back, screaming, "Go!" I grabbed a handful of papers from the floor, logs, schematics, anything, stuffing them into my jacket. The air was scorching, the metallic rot so thick I could barely breathe. The figures closed in, their whispers deafening, their eyes swallowing the light. We ran for the door, the thumping shaking the ground, the machinery roaring like it was angry. The tunnel seemed longer going back, the walls closing in, the symbols glowing brighter. The whispers followed, my name echoing, mixed with that chuckle. We reached the hatch, scrambling up to the main floor, the figures' footsteps scraping behind us. The conveyor belts were moving again, screeching, and more shapes crawled from them, their pale faces grinning. We didn't stop, bolting for the exit, the factory's air thick with that sickly smell. The door to the outside was open, dawn's light spilling in, and we stumbled into the gravel lot, gasping. I looked back, and the factory was silent, but a window flickered. A pale hand pressed against it. My name scratched into the glass again. The papers in my jacket felt heavy, the schematics showing more than just bodies, something about binding and seals. Whatever Halstead's making, it's not machine parts. It's us, or something like us, and it's not done. Have you ever discovered a truth so horrifying you wished you could forget it? Chapter 10. Leaving the factory meant taking its secrets home. Forever I'm Ethan, and this is it, the final night at Halstead Manufacturing. 10 nights, each one stripping away a piece of us. The thing in the furnace with its black eyes, the machines humming without power, my face on the cameras, time cards for workers who never existed, blueprints of hidden sublevels, things crawling from the conveyor belts whispering my name, Henry Walsh's warning about midnight, and last night, finding out the factory's making something human, or close to it, in that underground chamber. Sarah's broken, her eyes distant. Marcus is all rage and fear, his hands shaking. Lila's barely there, a shadow of herself. Me? I'm terrified, but the blueprints, the notebook, the schematics, they're a weight I can't put down. Tonight we went back to end it, but I'm starting to think Halstead's secrets don't let you go. The air was frigid, the kind of cold that bites through your jacket and settles in your bones. The gravel lot crunched under our boots as we approached Halstead, its silhouette a dark wound against the night sky. The smokestack stood like silent guards, and the broken windows glinted, reflecting our flashlights. That burnt hair smell was there, sharp and sour, mixed with the metallic rot and that sickly sweet decay from the chamber below. A window flickered, a pale shape moving behind it, and my stomach churned. Sarah's voice was a whisper. "This ends tonight, Ethan." Lila clutched her thermos, her hands trembling so badly coffee spilled. Marcus gripped his crowbar, his eyes wild. "We destroy that chamber," he said, "and we're free." I nodded. The blueprints and notebook heavy in my jacket, but I wasn't sure freedom was possible anymore. Inside, the main floor was a maze of rusted machines, the fluorescent lights flickering so weakly they barely touched the shadows. The air was thick with dust, metal, and rot coating my throat. The silence was heavy, no hum, no whispers, just our footsteps echoing like a warning. We headed for the hatch under the press, the one leading to the sublevels. No one spoke, but the tension was suffocating. The schematics from last night showed a way to shut down the machinery in the containment chamber, something about breaking the seals. "We find it, we end it," I said, clutching the papers. Sarah nodded, her face pale. Lila's eyes were empty. Marcus's jaw was tight, his crowbar ready. The hatch creaked as we opened it, the glowing symbols on its surface pulsing red. The air rushing up was hot, thick with that metallic decay, like blood and molten steel. We descended, our flashlights barely cutting through the tunnel's gloom, its walls damp and carved with those symbols, glowing brighter now, like they knew we were coming. The thumping started, a slow heartbeat shaking the walls, and that chuckle, low, guttural, echoed from below. Lila whimpered, her thermos slipping. Sarah grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "We can do this," she whispered, but her voice shook. I wanted to believe her, but the notebook's warning rang in my head. "They'll take you." The tunnel led to the containment chamber's door, its iron surface warm, the symbols pulsing like a heartbeat. The air was scorching, the smell of rot and metal so thick I gagged. Marcus pried the door open, the hinges screaming, and we stepped into the chamber. The vast space was just as we'd left it, walls carved with glowing symbols, the circular platform surrounded by vats of bubbling red-glowing liquid. The machinery hummed, alive, pumping that liquid into molds shaped like human forms. Shapes moved inside the vats, their limbs too long, their faces eyeless, forming and dissolving. Scattered papers, time cards, logs, photographs littered the floor, my name scrawled on too many. The thumping was deafening, the symbols pulsing faster. The chuckle grew louder, coming from the platform where a figure stood, tall, pale, its face a twisted version of mine, its black eyes glinting. Dozens more emerged from the shadows, their faces matching the time cards, their grins too wide. They didn't move, just watched, whispering, "Ethan, stay." Marcus swung his crowbar at a vat, shattering it, the liquid spilling like blood, a half-formed shape collapsing onto the floor, its limbs twitching. Break the seals! I shouted, finding a control panel from the schematics, its surface etched with symbols. I smashed it with the crowbar, sparks flying, the hum faltering. The figures lunged, their long fingers scraping the ground, their whispers turning to screams. Sarah grabbed a pipe, swinging at one while Lila screamed, backing against the wall. I kept smashing the panel, the symbols flickering out, the thumping slowing. The machinery groaned, the vats cracking, liquid pooling around us, reeking of decay. The figures were faster now, their black eyes swallowing the light, my name a chant in their raspy voices. Marcus shouted, "Ethan, hurry!" as he fought off a shape with his crowbar. I hit the panel one last time and the hum stopped, the symbols going dark, the thumping silenced. The figures froze, their grins fading, their bodies collapsing into the liquid, dissolving like ash. The air cleared, the rot smell fading, but the chamber felt wrong, like it was waiting. We grabbed what papers we could, logs, schematics, a photograph of those workers, their faces pale and wrong, and ran. The tunnel seemed to stretch, the walls closing in, but we reached the hatch, scrambling to the main floor. The factory was silent, the machines still, the lights dead. We bolted for the exit, dawn's light spilling through the open door, and stumbled into the lot, gasping. I looked back, expecting a figure in the window. But there was nothing, just Halstead, dark and quiet. We drove away, the papers in my lap, my name still scrawled on them. At home, I locked the door, but the notebook felt heavy, the blueprints glowing faintly in the dark. I hear whispers sometimes, my name in that raspy voice, and I see them in mirrors, pale faces, black eyes, watching. We left Halstead, but its secrets came with us, and I don't think they'll ever let us go. Have you ever escaped something only to find it followed you home? Share in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone.